Farmers across the country growing nearly any row crop commodity are facing tight or in some cases negative margins as 2025 comes to a close. In spite of that, these same farmers need to plan for that 2026 crop, and that includes planning fertility. I talked with Klumeke of Corteva about how farmers can maximize the dollars they're spending on nitrogen.
Early in the harvest time, we need to be looking at planning for next year. What worked, what didn't, and if farmers have any trials out, how did they go? And their thoughts are going to turn really quick from a bountiful harvest, hopefully, into getting all of their replacement P and K on. And then some folks will want to turn their attention to nitrogen.
For those growers who are looking to do some fall applied nitrogen, they're hoping to maybe save some time in the spring. That's a huge expense. Chris, how should they be looking at it through this window of tight margins on farms across the country?
Well, if you think about applying nitrogen here, hopefully we wait until November to do that when the soil's 50 degrees. Farmers are spending a lot of money, and it's one of their most expensive input after they think about ground and they think about seed. How can we protect that investment whenever they're applying their fall nitrogen? Because we're applying it in November and we're asking that nitrogen to last until the middle of August. Some folks think, oh, I got it, my corn to tassel, it's done with nitrogen. The truth is actually we need about 30% of our nitrogen needs after the corn tassels. So if we're applying a nitrogen and asking it to last until the middle of August, that's a lot to ask for nitrogen to stay in the soil.
So if we're going to ask that of our nitrogen, Chris, how can we make sure it does what we are asking it to? How can we make it last through August?
So I work at Corteva Agriscience, and two of our products are N-Serve and Instinct. They're nitrification inhibitors. And what we do is we just slow down that process from the good ammonium that's in the positive form, that's attached to the soil particle, that won't go anywhere. The nitrification process, we slow that down so it doesn't become nitrate, where it's negative and the soil's negative, and then it's free to roam around the soil and can leach and denitrify, causing some issues with groundwater.
So really we're looking to just lock that nitrogen in place for the entirety of the winter.
Yeah, that's as soil cools down, bacteria in the soil from 50 down to 30, once it gets to 30 degrees, the bacteria are going to go to sleep. They're in their winter nap. And really what we're trying to do is protect it during that spring warm up until we get to planting, because then the bacteria will start to come back to life, and we just want to keep it asleep a little while longer.
Talk to me a little bit about how N-Serve has performed in the field. I know you guys are running trials each year. How have they looked?
Yeah, so N-Serve is a product that you can't see work. So you can't see nitrification happen. I'm looking down here at a volunteer soybean. If I spray that with a herbicide, I'm going to come out here a couple days later and I'm going to see a dead weed. If I apply nitrogen and I come out here a couple weeks later, I'm just looking at soil. So a lot of times we do trials with growers, and if we just summarize some of the data that I saw this fall, or for this last fall, throughout this summer, we like to soil test monthly. We see about 20% more nitrogen in the ammonium form where we have no inhibitor versus one of our inhibitors.
How have Corteva'S products stacked up against the competition in those trials?
So if you look at trials, we just took one out last week. It was a spring applied, and it was in northwest Missouri, and we had a lot of rain over there, so they didn't get their crop planted as quickly as they wanted to, and you would expect that we lost a lot of nitrogen. And through pictures and yield, we saw like a 14 bushel yield difference versus the treated versus untreated, and like a 12 bushel difference between the competitive product that we stacked up against.
All right. And when you're looking at that kind of return, how do farmers figure this into their ROI?
We've looked at all of our data throughout the years, and we can say with a lot of confidence that 82% of the time, we're going to see a win with one of our nitrification inhibitors. I mean, if you think about gambling, and you can go to a casino where you can put your money in a machine that pays you back 20% of the time, or one that pays you back 80% of the time. And so with 82% win rate, that's pretty good. And if you look at the economics of it, through all of our data, we see about a 7% yield increase. So if you do 7% on 200 bushel, that's 14 bushel. that's money that they can put in their pocket, especially whenever times are a little tighter with commodity prices.
Now, Chris, you mentioned it is getting close to time to apply that fall nitrogen, but we're not quite there yet. What do you advise growers to do to make sure this is a responsible application of nitrogen in the fall?
Yeah, nitrogen, if they're applying anhydrous ammonia, we want farmers to be safe. First and foremost, we want them home every night with their families. Whenever they're getting their equipment ready, make sure those water tanks are ready. Maybe put an extra jug of water in the cab, so if you do get an anhydrous on you, you're safe with that. And also, anhydrous equipment does have it's dated, and so some of those hoses need to be replaced. We need to make sure the equipment's up to snuff and calibrated. Make sure you're calibrating your ammonia equipment so you get the correct rate of anhydrous on. And then also look at if you're putting N-Serve in your tank, that you calibrate that equipment as well, or if you're direct injecting it, that's all calibrated so you get the right rate. And then finally, we want to make sure soil conditions are right. Earlier we talked about 50-degree soil temperature. We want to make sure that soil temperature is 50 degrees and falling.
If rain is in the forecast, is it better to wait until after it rains, or do you beat the rain and get it on?
If the soil conditions are correct, get her on.
Thank you, Chris. Folks, let's stabilize that nitrogen this winter and make sure it's where you need it for the 2026 growing season. We'll be back with more after this.